time for more Twisted Metal. A lot more if you're noticing the video length. For this outing, we'll be playing as Outlaw, the cop car. Its driver is Sergeant Carl Roberts, a good cop, that's how you know this is a fantasy, in Calypso's Twisted World. He wants to put an end to the contest because it's so life-threatening. He's got middle-of-the-line stats, but the same armor as Sweet Tooth, so he'll actually get to live a little while. And his special is called the Taser. He's a non-lethal cop, so you know it's the 90s. There's our password for the River Park Rumble. A record 6 opponents we'll be facing this time. It's going to take a pretty long time to take him down, unlike last time where we completed 3 levels in 10 minutes. And we're going to get to fight Sweet Tooth, and eventually we'll even be seeing Mr. Grimm for the first time. In addition to just having a bunch more opponents, the level itself is also considerably more engaging than anything we've seen before. This half of the level is pretty much the Warehouse District level, but there's a whole other half of it where there will be a lot to see. But for now, just looking at this city block area, it's a decent place to fight because you can always whip around corners and stuff. But here we have bridges over a canal. Inside the canal you can get some decent weapons. And then you can eventually get out of the canal and do some fighting. If you've seen Twisted Metal Black, this level might seem a little bit familiar. It was remade for the downtown level in that game. Downtown is my least favorite level in Twisted Metal Black, yet in its original incarnation here, it's maybe the single best level in the game. I think that aptly demonstrates the disparity in quality between this debut and future installments in the series. So why did I pick Outlaw of all the characters that I could have picked? And it's exclusively because of his ending video. Several of the endings in this game are referenced in the next game, or in some way relevant to Twisted Metal 2. Of those endings, the only one that goes on to still have relevance all the way on to Twisted Metal Head On is Outlaw's ending. So I'm kind of bound to show it off because I'm also going to be LPing Head On. Kill the civilian, the 2D businessman. This is where we're starting to see civilians. I also ran over an ice skater because screw anything feminine, right? Gamers out there? Ugh, David Jaffe. Anyway, Outlaw's wish is also to end the competition. There's pretty much one of those in every game. This is the first one though, so also worth showing off for that reason. The car itself is not really to my liking, but it's perfectly viable because it has 4 armor. That's the base of what you need in order to survive this game. Technically the same as Sweet Tooth. I think Outlaw does go down slightly faster than Sweet Tooth does. Could be my imagination though. The fact that it's a smaller car is relevant because you will get thrown around more, and when you ram into enemies, your hitbox will sometimes get lodged on top of theirs if you're a smaller vehicle, and that will cause you to take constant contact damage, which can be lethal very, very quickly. That's the thing about collisions. I don't think they were intentionally programmed to be as deadly as they are. It's because when 2 vehicles touch, they kind of connect into a single item, and any movement while they're touching counts as ramming damage to the other vehicle. Both vehicles will take constant piles of damage. That's why you need armor, because in that situation you'll just die. It also means that ramming enemies with turbo tends to do less damage than just rubbing up against them. Because if you hit them with turbo, they'll go flying away. They'll take more damage from the initial impact and then no further damage. Outlaw's special weapon, the taser, has a 3 out of 5 star rating, but it's extremely bad. It's the electric beam that spins around the vehicle centered on the police sirens. There it is. It is easy to hit with. It will hit in any direction as long as you're within a very small proximity to the vehicle you're trying to hit. But it does just a tiny little bit of damage, just barely more than a machine gun shot. It does regenerate pretty quickly, so one of your big strategies when playing as Outlaw is to intentionally get really close to enemies, dump all your specials into them, and then drive away and wait for the special to regenerate. But you always want to be using that special every time it comes up. And assisting us in doing that, there is a little green dot that appears above the weapons and below the health bar every time your special is regenerated. So right now I have 1 use in special available. So I always keep an eye out for that green dot to appear, and then immediately try to use the special. And you can only carry a maximum of 3, so you want to dump them out as quickly as possible. Because damage is permanent on enemies, so you want it to add up, even if it's just little bits at a time. It is kind of an annoying strategy to have to deal with, though. Mr. Grimm, of course, has the highest damage weapon in the entire game in his special, but it's very hard to hit with. It's sort of a tradition with Mr. Grimm. We're at 50-50, enemies alive and dead at the moment. And we just rounded the halfway mark. Let us celebrate with a 6 stunt. Yeah, good stuff. If you hit a ramp with just 2 wheels instead of all 4, your car will do about 1,000 barrel rolls in midair. And when it lands, it'll take anywhere from light to extremely severe damage. So ramps are best avoided entirely, because they might just kill you, like pretty much everything else. Our special, being so easy to hit with, is really good for dealing with Mr. Grimm, who has the lowest armor of anybody in the game, of course. But he's impossibly fast, and his AI routine is just to run away until he is the final enemy remaining. Then he'll actually stand and fight. But he'll just do strafing runs, and he's kind of hard to hit. Certainly hard to ram. So the taser's decent in that one specific condition. But we'll get rid of him one way or another. Just keep dancing back and forth. There he goes. Level over. We're going to the famous Cybervia. This is a well-known level in this game, and it comes with 8 opponents. So we're going to spend a lot of time here. I don't know why it's called Cybervia, of all things. It's just normal suburbs. Might just be because 2005 actually was an inconceivably futuristic year in 1995. So they were like, oh, I guess we're going to have cyber suburbs then. Not off to a great start. Sweet Tooth has already killed me once. But I did manage to do a thing that does a lot of damage to Sweet Tooth, which is get underneath him while he's turning. His vehicle goes up on 2 wheels, and you can sort of wedge yourself under there. And you'll do a pile of damage to him if you do that. And there was a guy just standing on a lawn. That guy was, according to the manual, Crazy Joe. And he's a deranged homeless person. Obviously, the twisted part of the game's title is meant to have a dual meaning, justifying their terrible, offensive depictions of mental illness. which continues throughout the entire series. Later on, the metal part would have a dual meaning, when they would start to have licensed soundtracks featuring the likes of Rob Zombie and whatnot. But those are mostly the games that weren't developed by Single Track and its offshoots. So we won't be seeing too much of that in this Let's Play, actually. We'll be missing a huge part of the Twisted Metal experience. And while I have the chance, the little symbols underneath the enemy health bars, those are the remaining enemies, of course, and the enemies that have been killed. The little alpha symbol is supposed to be a 0, which confused me when I started playing this game. I would look down at my missiles and have 1 alpha. Might be another one of those bad stylistic choices, but I assume it's another uniquely PS1 problem. Can't even render text properly. In addition to all the sliding textures all over the place, when you get too close to a wall, it literally curves at the end of the screen, even though it's a straight wall. I don't know why this was ever considered acceptable. I had an N64, so I never experienced this junk. It's all weird and gross to me. And having never had a PS1, I never played these games when they were new. I'm experiencing this for the first time in recent years, which is a bad way to experience it. Still, Twisted Metal is actually, like, fun. Once you get over the hurdle of figuring out what's even going on and what you're supposed to do about it. Which almost every Twisted Metal game has some difficulty getting players to that point. This game in particular suffers so much and ages so poorly because it was not permitted to be what it wanted to be, which was a fighting game with cars. That was the base idea that led to this game. That's pretty much why it has the level structure of a Mortal Kombat game, and pretty much the same plot as a Mortal Kombat game as well. That's the premise they were pursuing, but executives had no confidence in the idea, kept trying to change it into something else. One of the big ideas was make it a pizza delivery game. They probably would not be making a Twisted Metal TV series 25 years later had it been a pizza delivery game. By the way, they just announced that there's a new Twisted Metal TV series coming. But anyway, it's clear that with this game they were unable to assemble things the way they wanted to. So really, the next game is the Twisted Metal proof of concept that leads to everything we know about the series today. And most of this game just gets ignored by the next game. At the end of this video, I'll be linking 4 additional endings, so that we can eventually catch up to the 12 that are in this game. And I'll be linking the ones that do not end up relating to anything ever again in the entire rest of the series. One of them will be Pit Viper, the only character who never appears again in any other game. There's actually a reason that they abandoned that concept and that concept alone so quickly. But we'll be covering that in the second game. The driver's wish is merely to have $1 million. So we'll see how that can go awry. Roadkill. Its driver is a military vet who wants to go back in time and save his platoon that he accidentally doomed by sending them on a suicide mission. There's Spectre, driven by the literal ghost of one of Sweet Tooth's victims, who wants to come back to life so that he can meet his baby daughter who was born after his death. Oh hell, I just found the gas station of Cybervia, which, in a baffling move, is not explodable. What a shame. That better have been cut for time. Anyway, the 4th and final ending that I'll be linking after this video will be that of Warthog. Warthog also works for the military, and he wants to recover an item. He's actually racing against the driver of Crimson Fury to get this item for the US government. Warthog is actually kind of special in that it shares a distinction that only Mr. Grimm and Sweet Tooth also share. It's one of the only vehicles that appears in every single Twisted Metal game to date. And Mr. Grimm has changed vehicles considerably, so technically Mr. Grimm is the character who's been in every game. Warthog and Sweet Tooth are the vehicles who've been in every game. Just kind of weird that specific kind of generic vehicle has been so omnipresent. So, in addition to the suburbs area, you can drive through the famous LA reservoir thing that's in all those movies. It's a big old square in this game. It's a decent hub. I think it's actually in the dead center of the level. It's very hard to tell, but it's a good way to get from one corner of the suburbs to another. Just cut through the reservoir. Because the level is just ridiculously huge, it's often pretty difficult to find where the recharge stations are and whether or not they are reactivated at any given time. And this level is extremely difficult because of all the enemies, so that's a pretty big problem. There's no real solution either. You just gotta keep moving. If you're in trouble, just run away. Pull a Mr. Grimm and get out of there. And we just made it to half the enemies killed. At this point, the level actually does become much, much easier. It's so large that it is pretty easy to separate single opponents. I can often come out on top in one-on-one combat. Usually, if I'm going to lose this level, I will run out of all my lives while there are still 6 or 7 enemies remaining. When I get to this point, I am usually in control. So I thought I'd do some exploring. I headed out to the highway area that surrounds the suburbs, because this level is gigantic. Past the sexy billboard to the only turbo pickup in the entire level, all the way out here. There's an oil slick. Another sexy billboard. Get a better look at it this time. Yeah, we've got some Mario Kart pickups out here. They're pretty useless most of the time. On the next level, they can do some real damage. But we had the oil slick. I think we picked up some road spikes. Those do no damage, but if you get hit with them, your car goes much more slowly for a couple of seconds. Then your tires regenerate. Just real quick, I do point out Hammerhead. Even though we're not going to see its ending yet, it's driven by 2 high school dropouts who stole a monster truck. And their wish in the text version of the ending is for new tires. It's very disappointing that those characters exist. Somehow the video version of the ending's even worse. Crimson Fury just died very quickly, as he often does. His driver is Agent Stone, a name that was later reused in Twisted Metal Black for a completely different character. In this game, he is a ripoff of James Bond. There was Pit Viper getting an actual kill on me. Gotta point those out when they happen, because we're not gonna see very much Pit Viper this series. She used her special, which is to spit gobs of acid, which are, of course, little 2D green sprites. They actually do considerable damage and make an adorable Nickelodeon slime sound. So, you know, nothing wrong with Pit Viper. It is kind of funny, the occasional tonal inconsistencies in this game, with all the cartoon sound effects and terribly acted joke endings, all while we are encouraged to run over pedestrians, and of course there's lots of people getting shot to death in the endings as well. People sometimes think that Twisted Metal Black went too far in being dark and edgy, but it was at least consistent. This game tries to be edgy and cute, and it only kinda works. They get a better balance in future games, but they're always just a little bit off. And we're right about that point in the level where we're almost done, but I'm on my last life, so I don't want to take risks because the level is preposterously long, takes forever, and is actually very, very difficult. I don't know if that's coming across in the video, but this took a lot of tries to get an actual completed run, even using the password to come in with full lives. So I am employing hit and run strategies and not doing too much until I know there are health refills available, because I don't want to lose at this point. It's been over 10 minutes of gameplay, and if I do lose, it could easily take 10, 15 more tries to get this far again. I was originally going to use cheats to complete this level to speed it up, because it needs to be sped up, but the only cheat you can enter mid-level is to improve your machine guns, and I don't think it works. Pretty sure the only actual working cheats are entered at the password screen. And those are things like invincibility and infinite ammo. They're very powerful cheats. So if you just want to see the text endings, use those. But the text endings are pretty bad. Mr. Grimm, he's not the last enemy, so he's still got his runaway AI. And there's really nothing you can do about it. He's that much faster than everybody else. He's going to get away. So in order to kill him, we have to kill Hammerhead first. Hammerhead is perhaps the single deadliest enemy in the game. He's got very high armor, and he has a melee special attack, so he will always try to ram you and crush you and instant kill you. Because no matter how high your armor is, he's in a monster truck. He can just roll right over you. But hey, Mr. Grimm did a chicken run at me and lost. So that leaves only Hammerhead and Mr. Grimm's corpse. All the corpses lie around after they die, but Mr. Grimm, he's actually visible in his vehicle, so he's definitely dead. But so is Hammerhead, died to a mine. Now it's time to see the ending that was so important, it had to be carried on through a full decade of series canon.
Cut the formalities, Calypso. I'm here for my prize. It's over.
I see you want my competition brought to an end. This is the prize you want in exchange for winning my contest?
That's right. No more dead bodies. No more unsafe streets. No more war. Your promise was and has been since the beginning of this unholy competition that the winner gets whatever he asks for. Whatever, Calypso. Now, I hear you're a man of your word, so I expect...
Officer, I've given you no reason to doubt me. You are the winner, and I am bound to respect your decision. Let it be recorded that on this night, December 24th, 2005, Officer Carl Roberts is granted a world free of the high-octane competition. Now, officer, drive out of this garage and enter a world free of the pain and suffering you claim my cause. This competition, my vision, shall be over for good. You have my word.
Oh, no.
Welcome to your new world, officer. Just as promised, it is free of high-octane competition. And everything else. Enjoy!
Calypso! No!
Looks like in ending the Twisted Metal competition, Carl Roberts, who was doing an impression that is these days pretty popular, managed to end the entire world. Rather, he was sent to a world without the Twisted Metal competition, which the text ending makes explicit is just outer space. He got dumped somewhere in the middle of the universe in the least clever twist that Calypso could have come up with. Also worth noting that Calypso called it the High Octane competition, not Twisted Metal. That was also written on his poster back in the arena level. I don't know if that was going to be the original title of the entire game, but it was definitely the original name of the contest. We'll learn more about the fate of Carl Roberts in the next game, and we'll see the end of this competition in the next video.